Okie dokie, and I'll just send the links out. Hap, do you tell me honestly? It doesn't fucking bother me. Do you particularly mind if I put the link in the guild chat channel as opposed to the stream channel?
I don't care.
Okay.
It doesn't matter to me. You're like one of the one people that can get away with whatever.
I'll try not to abuse this great power.
No, I know you won't. That's why I say you're like the one person that I don't mind.
All good, mate. All good. All right, I'll just chuck it in the Discord.
I'm going to be famous.
And then we'll throw it in here. And we'll throw it in here. Okay, and that's it. And I'll just do an at everyone in the countdown Discord, and we're good to go. All right, now we can fucking relax. Ooh, okay. I'll get that started, and I'll throw this over here. All right, I think we are pretty much good to go. Perfect. All right. Let me just get a beer, guys, and we'll get started.
There are more people currently playing Diablo 3 than Diablo 4 right now.
I'm not surprised at all. Pretty disappointed with D4.
By almost 10 times the amount.
Holy cow. I haven't even touched D4, so I had no clue what went wrong with it.
They tried to make an MMO and an ARPG together, and the gear progression sucks on top of that. Just kind of none of it really works together.
Is it as like doomer as everyone's saying? Because I read on the online, everyone's saying it is beyond dead, like not even gaming hyperbole.
It's an okay game. It's not an okay Diablo game.
Oh, I played it. I played it at the start, but then the season came out, and apparently no one is playing it anymore.
Yeah, it's like for me, I wanted the story driven, and I loved it at first because it was just you were right into the main story quest, meeting Laura, and then as soon as I hit the open world, I completely lost engagement.
Fair enough.
Like I said, Norfair just linked it to me, and Diablo 3 has 13,600 people playing. Diablo 4 has 1,300 people.
Yeah, I did hear about that the Twitch numbers were bad. Oh my god. Anyway, is everyone ready? Should we just get started, or what do you reckon?
Let's jump into it.
Let's do it. All right, fuck it. All right, guys, here we go. I'll just start my Audacity recording, and we'll get started. And go. Okay, so naturally as a World of Warcraft classic player, I've been tanking for 3.5 seconds and now consider myself an expert on the subject. So I figured, why not surround myself by other experts as well and tell you all how to tank? Obviously, I'm being very facetious, everyone. Hello and welcome. I really wanted to discuss something that I think is going to be a pretty meaty conversation with, a lot of people put their hands up for this one, and I shouldn't be surprised as soon as you say the word tank, they all come out of the woodwork and love to discuss the things that they're very passionate about. But tanking in hardcore WoW is, a different beast in and of itself. So I've been absolutely loving it, and I'm so happy to be surrounded by people who are also absolutely loving it. And look, because there's 7 of them here joining me, we might have to rip through the introductions as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we'll be here for 20 minutes introducing everyone. So we'll just, guys, it's nothing personal. We'll go short and snappy. Clevis, mate, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good, Josh. How are you?
I'm very good, Sunshine. Hap, brother, hello.
Another day. How are you?
Another day, another dollar. Very good, my friend. Pyrolin, how are you, my friend?
Very well, thank you.
Very good to have you here. First timer. Ochoa, have you been on the show before?
No, I have not. You mentioned a comment of mine, but I've not been on.
Very good to have you here, my friend. Character, mate, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for saying yes to joining me. Totoro, how are you, mate?
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Mate, it's a pleasure. And Ren Roars, how are you?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you. I think everyone here is part of pushing up Peace Bloom. Is that right?
I am.
Yep, seems that way.
Yeah, very
I
good.
might be the odd one out on Skull Rock here.
Oh no, all good, all good. A Skull Rock aficionado, that's all good. Look, guys, I'm so happy to have so many of you here because we'll get so many varying opinions maybe on some of the things that we talk about. But I'll ease us into it with a very generic conversation, and we'll get more specific as time goes on. Let me just sort of throw it out there to the... Well, Clevis, I'll start with you, and people might piggyback off of the points that you raise. But actually, no, fuck you, Clevis, because I know what your answer is going to be. I was going to say, what pushed you to tank in hardcore WoW? But I mean, you were never going to play anything but a tank, were you, Clevis?
No, yeah, I'm probably the old man of the group here. So I guess, what do we have? 15 years experience or something?
You literally don't know how to do anything else.
No, yeah, I'm pretty useless at everything else. Yeah.
Do you ever DPS or heal?
Yeah. I mean, warriors have aspects. I'm playing a Death Knight in Wrath Classic right now as DPS.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, well, let's go to the others and throw it around. Pyrolin, I'll start with you, mate. Baptism by Fire. What pushed you to want to tank in hardcore WoW of all game modes?
I just really like getting hit in the face.
It's like Fight Club.
Yeah, a little bit. But no, I just wanted to tank going into Classic in 2019 and kind of kept doing that into TBC. Swapped over to heal at the end of TBC. Been doing that in Wrath, tank 4 for our guild there. But then with Hardcore coming out with Blood Sail, I was sitting there watching that and going, I want to do this hardcore mode. But couldn't trust myself to stick to it with the add-on. And as soon as they announced the official servers, it was okay. I'm waiting. I'm in.
Very good, very good. Is anyone else tanking for the first time? Just me? That's all right. That's all right. Was anyone fearful of tanking in hardcore WoW and actually second guess themselves a little bit, even though they love to tank?
I was a little bit, just because the fact that I knew how some of the players play in current retail WoW, and not knowing if they would recognize the
nuance,
like that, like if you die, you have to start back over completely. And so I was nervous that there would be issues with people trying to rush dungeons too quickly, that I wouldn't be able to hold the aggro, or that I would just drop over.
Well, fuck it. Let's get started on that. I wouldn't even call it a tangent. It's a major talking point. Let's get started on the respect for threat, and also the respect for maybe taking it a little bit slower and steadier than you usually would. And guys, we might just sort of, jump in, dive in when you've got something to say. We'll all just have to sort of go nuts rather than me directing questions to people in particular. And I'll just keep an eye on maybe who hasn't said anything for a while and try and direct questions to them when I can. But has anyone already had horror stories? Because I'm seeing them all over the subreddit of the disrespect for the tank's timing and the tank setting the tone of the dungeon, and people starting to pull out of frustration for you.
I think that there's definitely a synergy between the healer and the tank. And I actually said yes to the podcast, but I don't tank at all. But I've healed a lot of crotch watchers. And there are some things between the healer and the tank that I appreciate as a healer. The one thing is the pace needs to be set by the healer's mana. If it's a guild run, I really appreciate it when the tank at least sees that I have one tick of a drink, knowing that I'm drinking and that I'm sitting, and positions them in a place where I don't have to really strain to get them back in line of sight. Yeah, that's the scary part for me.
That's a really good point to start off with that I'd never really thought about, that I'd ask you other guys if you 100% agree with that or slightly disagree. Where the slogan of tanking really is historically the tank sets the pace. But as Hap said, actually slight disagree, or maybe slight moment of lost in translation, you're actually being set the pace by the healer's mana bar, which I completely agree with. I wish I'd thought of that earlier. Do you guys live by that edict?
Absolutely, I do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to keeping an eye on your healer's mana bar. Obviously, it's just as much your responsibility as it is theirs. But going back to what Hap said too, it's really about the synergy between the two. It's communicating, or at least seeing what's going on, and responding to each other that way. Go ahead.
It's like a base player and a drummer. It's both of their responsibilities to keep the tempo at what it's supposed to be, but they are both relying on each other to hear the kick.
Are you saying the bass player and the drummer secretly run the band and everyone else who's there is just there for fun?
Oh, 100%.
Yes, well, as a drummer, I think so.
Yeah, very good, very good. You know,
I was going to say, if
go.
there's any member in the band, he's got to be the drummer, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's one of those things where obviously you don't go ahead if your healer has no mana. That goes without saying. But having that tempo there of just getting to know your healer, and are they the person that sits down for a quick couple of, ticks of drinking after every pull? Do they prefer to splurge and then drink it all back up in one hit? And just getting a feel for that is actually going to be, is it 4/4 timing or 2/4 timing, or what are we doing here? I really like that point.
I had the pleasure in 2019 Classic of leveling, basically dungeon grinding the whole way with a shaman healer, and getting to know and us getting in sync with tanking through a dungeon was, I'd say, paramount in everyone's experience. I mean, I don't think a lot of people in the group realized really how much we were kind of playing off of each other, but you definitely do keep your rage up as you make sure the healer keeps their mana up as well.
I'm an odd one. And again, guys, everything I say in this chat, you have to understand is being said through the eyes of a first-time tank in vanilla WoW. So I'm going to say some things that are wrong. But I'm an odd one in that because with hardcore, your priorities have been flipped so much with it's just survive. Everything else takes a backseat to that. I have not given a fuck about my rage deterioration at all. And I don't care if I go down to 0. I'm happy to start a pool with nothing and just, either go a ranged pool or charge in or whatever and start from scratch with the rage. The more important thing is just making sure everything is in the best position it can be going into each pool. And I have been a reasonably, my group, I think, has somewhat enjoyed the pace that we've been going at because, as they describe it, it is steady. It is neither slow nor fast, but steady. Have you guys been phased by sort of rage degeneration, or how are you tackling it?
It drives me crazy.
A little bit of the opposite problem for me.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
How do you mean? Go ahead.
So I play Paladin instead of Warrior. So whereas I'm kind of forced into maintaining that same cadence with the healer, taking a sip in between each pull, making sure mana's topped off. Warrior gets going into the fight. You're wanting to keep your rage up. You want to go in with as much rage as you can so they can burst the threat. But then once you're going, you're not really worried about losing rage unless you pop over and spam execute or something and drain yourself. Foolish. But running Dead Mines on Van Cleef, DPS kind of all over the place hitting different ads, and so I'm sitting here burning through my mana, get to the end, get another wave of ads, and I've got nothing to take them off the healer. So I just have to hope that the DPS kill Van Cleef before the ads kill the healer.
Clevis, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, as I guess one of the resident warriors here, it is a significant factor, right? We're talking about dictating the pace, and typically I like to let my rage degen, I guess, sort of dictate the pace. But that's where that trust comes in with the healer, right? Is every pull, the pace is essentially, okay, did we get out of combat? Can you start drinking? Okay, great, let's go. Because I want to keep my rage going every single pull. But that's a choice that you make versus what a lot of people are going to want to do, especially in hardcore, is just be extra safe. And every single pull, slow down, let's drink to full. And that just because I guess, I have so many, years or whatever experience doing it differently just can really drive me crazy in pools.
Have you guys found that people are respectful with your personal experiences so far of the slow down and survive method? Have you had good communication, good respect of yeah, man, fucking take as much time as you need as long as we walk out of here?
Yeah, if you look at the people that complain after about a tank, no one ever says, man, that tank was super, super slow. They say, man, that piece of shit tank, he aggroed another extra however many mobs because he was going too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Fair enough.
I mean, I'll say that, right? It's a nice change of pace. Hardcore is compared to, like we were talking about, the retail Andes or whatever coming into hardcore, coming back into classic with a different mindset. I think hardcore kind of corrects that pretty quickly.
I started on Hunter with my first tune, and I died stupidly, as you do. Run level 27 or so, and then re-rolled Warrior. So I'm kind of in the second wave of people leveling up. At the start of my Shadowfang Keep today, there was a bit of chatter, which is always good when you want to see it a pug. People are like active and paying attention. And a lot of people had died 3 or 4 times. This is their 4th character. And then in the dungeon, I think it was less of a lack of respect for me as a tank and more just a lack of respect for the dungeon itself and the mobs. I kind of was like, well, I think we're like going a little too fast, or like you're kind of intercepting my pulls, or maybe we should work together and coordinate a little more. And then the response I got was, oh, this is SFK, not Nax, lol.
Yeah, that's not what you want to hear, is it?
It was a little spooky, yeah.
There's a reason they're on their 3rd and 4th death.
100.
Oh, I know.
I was just going to say, it's funny that you hear that from the people who have died 3 and 4 times, because for me personally, every time I die, I'm like, okay, I need to take it slow next time. I need to focus more on this thing or whatever I messed up. Like, these people just want to blast through it. Okay.
This is the thing that I keep raising, guys, that like I'm hammering this point home every time I talk about hardcore, and I'm like, the biggest fucking test of hardcore WoW to every player is the first hurdle. Can you play differently to how you used to? And a lot of fucking people can't.
I agree with that statement as well. And like previously stated, that first wave when I initially leveled up as a paladin, everybody was more cautious and allowed me to do the pulls. And my second time playing as a warrior, a couple weeks into the game already at that point, I noticed there was a big shift where people were just wanting to get the dungeons done and pushing a lot harder than what I was able to manage with.
There's a big thing, like when there's a lot of people that their first character, they actually do way better than their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th character.
Yeah.
Because especially if they go with an initial wave, like a launch, they're very careful, and then they die, and then all of a sudden this fear of missing out causes them to feel like they need to catch up with the initial wave, and then they make mistakes again and again and again, and then all of a sudden you're on your 5th character and you've seen your friends hit 60 around you over and over and over again. Just take your time. Just take your time.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel that already on my 44 warrior hap. Like I've been saying, I'm sure you guys would agree. Like, yeah, hardcore WoW is a test of patience, it's a test of skill, but it's also a test of a little bit of luck. And I feel like I have had maybe, some slight moments of luck go my way that you don't think much of in the moment, but you might look back and go, fuck, if that little thing hadn't have gone my way when I was 27, I might not be here at 44. And wondering if I just got the blessed run on the warrior, that if I started up the next turn, would it just be another death at 22 or something like that? You never know.
I agree with that. And to add to that as well, I also feel that, once you've already leveled through a zone, having to do it again becomes more monotonous. And so with my paladin, I died at level 31. And then with my warrior, I died at 21. And of course, now I'm on my druid at level 13 currently. And I feel that my second time and third time, I feel like I'm pushing myself way harder to pull way more because I've already done these quests. I've already been in these areas, and I want to just get it done and get back to level 31, kind of like to be able to pick up where I left off. And I find myself pushing myself way harder than what I can actually sustain to try and get back up there again.
We'll keep it. Sorry. Go for it, mate.
I was going to say that, as you're leveling up, whether it's your first tune, second tune, third tune, you're looking around at people going and hitting 50, 55, 60. Would take your own pace, because the longer people play, they're going to wind up in Elwyn Forest behind you, and you'll wind up playing together at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, on the on sort of the more aggressive DPS players or whatnot, I've seen a bunch, and I'm honestly the quiet best part of hardcore WoW so far has been the absolute shot in the arm it's been for the subreddit. Some of the stories and some of the writing effort that people are putting into their posts in the subreddit have just been S-tier level shit, of these greatly detailed stories of either triumph or defeat in hardcore WoW. But a lot of stuff coming back on the impatient DPS from the tank's point of view, where they're like, hey, I was tanking this dungeon and this fuckwit just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and I told him to, if you pull one more mob before I do, then you're fucking tanking it. And eventually push comes to shove and something has to happen. They either kick them, or the tank leaves, or they let someone die, which is the more extreme option. So feel free to let your inner toxicity come out now, and maybe we'll out people for being, very, very harsh tanks, but we'll see what happens. But what do you guys generally like to do, or what are your plans to do if you get put in this situation? If you do get an overzealous DPS player and they've been told, hey, the rules are I pull, and if you break that, then X will happen. Do you generally go with kick them straight away? Do you go with I'm fucking leaving and then everyone can bitch at that player why they don't have a tank anymore? Or would you go the extreme? I mean, I would love to hear from people if you go by the old MMO rule of you tank it, you pull it, and fucking make them do the Makara with the mob.
You tank it, you pull it.
Yeah, you spank it, you tank
Sorry,
it.
you pull it and tank it, I mean, my bad.
I think it's a pretty easy rule for people to learn pretty quickly. When the mob doesn't get picked up by the tank and it comes straight at them. I'm going to try and, of course, probably message the healer in the group to say, you tank it, you pull it before, after the first time it happens, before it happens again. But after that first time, it's fair game for him. Yeah,
I was going to say, so Ochoa, is there, because I'd be happy to fucking, lay the smack down on people and be like, hey man, seriously, if you pull one more fucking time, you're tanking it. And if they don't learn, they don't learn. But like, I must admit, I'm very undecided. I'm not sure if I could let someone die unless they were being a complete and utter cock. I can't say what I would do in that situation. I'd have to live it. But Ochoa, it sounds like, have you made your mind up? Like, if someone was being an A-grade fuckwit, you'd happily stand there and watch them die?
I'd grab some popcorn, crack a beer.
So one thing I've noticed about the vanilla pacing of dungeons is the mobs actually aren't that dangerous unless you're in a raid.
Yeah.
In the sense that, I was pulling in Shadowfang today, and my rogue and my shaman would bow a target, and then they would cheap shot and just jump on it. So I would just switch skull and tank the other 2 or 3 that would come pass behind them and say, well, they're probably going to be fine, and just totally ignore it. And then eventually I started marking the squishier targets that wouldn't do much damage in physical anyway. So it was actually ended up being kind of worked it to our advantage in a way. I don't think that it gets that dangerous really until, well, you guys could probably tell me about the later game. I'm still in the 20s, but it seems like the elites don't hit that hard.
I agree with you to a certain extent in that you are spot on. Like, I'm seeing, and I can't wait to talk about this maybe a little bit later on, but I'm seeing way too many people want to bail way too early when it's like, okay, if you have a bad pull, if either the tank pulls more than, and don't get me wrong, I've had a couple of pulls, one in RFK and one last night in RFD, where I only intended to shoot one mob and get 1 pack, but 2 came, and you go, okay, we've now have 7 mobs on us, and it's like, don't freak out, it's not the end of the world. And I've learned, even though you get a little scared, you sort of watch the damage and you go, oh, like, that is a fair amount of mobs, but they're not like destroying people. And if you just go with a bit of communication, it's not even that much of a sweat. Like, even if they go on the healer, now don't get me wrong, late game dungeons, people might be laughing and go, yeah, Josh, try that shit in Scholar or whatnot. But these aren't raid bosses. They're just, elite mobs in a dungeon. So I hear what you're saying. But in saying that, obviously, if you don't talk, if you don't get on top of it in a reasonably timely fashion, the overwhelming nature of a number of mobs can obviously bring a lot of groups unstuck.
2 words saved my Uldaman group. The tank pulled the entire Cyclone room by accident, and we pulled it into the littlest, smallest hallway we could possibly pull it into. and I was about ready to bail because it was not looking pretty. And the tank said 2 words to me that saved our entire lives: "Don't panic."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I'm in it to the end with this guy.
And that's the
and
thing,
sure
yeah.
enough, we walked out and we kept on. It was close. It was really close, but those 2 words really saved us.
And it's kind of like, the 2 words you never want to hear from your tank are, "Oh shit."
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say earlier, there was something that someone told me that has always kind of rung true. The majority of the time, if a tank dies, it's probably the healer's fault. If the healer dies, it's probably the tank's fault. If a DPS dies, it's probably the DPS's fault.
That's right. It does still ring true. Yeah, it's the old adage. Absolutely. Oh dear, let me think. I want to keep going around on this notion. So we've got a Choa's take. Clevis, I'll throw it to you, mate. We'll hear from everyone on this. You've got the 3 paths in front of you with the dickhead in your group that won't stop pulling. That say the overzealous warlock or hunter or whatnot. Are you taking option A and saying, "Hey bud, I told you about that. Can you fucking knock it off?" Or do you kick them, or do you leave, or do you let them die?
It's not quite that simple. I usually am going to try to work with them, because usually if you have an overzealous DPS, we probably have the same goal, which is to run the dungeon quickly and efficiently. And so if it's someone that's actually pumping, then I'm going to want to work with them and say, "Hey, look, do you want to kill Skull? Do you want to kill the caster? Then I'm going to mark first, and I'll do everything else." And just figure out what it is that they want to get out of this dungeon. But if it's someone that's
blatantly not listening to you.
Yeah, if they're like actually terrible and don't know what they're doing, like I might, try to educate them a little bit. And then if they're just being belligerent beyond that point, then I might go so far as to let them die. I'm not gonna lie. Like it really depends. Like I could be the entire spectrum of this, but most often I'm gonna try to work with that person because I think that we have the same goal.
Oh, I think it goes without saying most tanks would take, the early option is communicate and try and figure out what's going on with them. This hypothetical is more that you've passed the point of no return, you've had the conversation, they won't stop being fuckwits. What do you do next? Pyrolin, what about you?
It kind of depends on what kind of mitigation the person doing it has. If they're wearing mail and not taking a whole lot of damage, and they want to go and hit something, I'll let them tank that mob, and I'll just make sure everything else stays off the healer. But if they're draining a whole bunch of the healer's mana, then we got to stop and talk about that, because that puts me at risk, that puts the other DPS at risk, that puts the healer at risk.
Okay, well, we'll come to you last, character, if you got a good story about this one. Ren, how about you, mate?
So I think that there's an interesting difference here between unofficial and now that we have official HC. It's just like your dungeon ID and unofficial was so valuable because you only got to run each one time. So you would go to the ends of the earth to make sure that you weren't losing people in the middle of your run or whatever. But now it's so much easier to just be like, "Oh, this guy's being a dick. Like, I'm just gonna kick him, or I'm just gonna leave." That hasn't happened to me yet since official is launched. Gotten pretty lucky in that regard, but it does definitely open it up as more of an option these days. And kind of going back to what you guys were saying about how some of these mobs just aren't that scary, especially in the early game. It's funny because you can be like, "Oh, okay, fine, you pull it, you tank it, and I'll just let you die," or whatever. But half the time that doesn't really work. Like the rest of the group won't let them die anyway, so you don't really get your justice or whatever you want to call it. So kind of like what Clevis was saying, it could go any of these ways for me and my groups particularly. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of situations where we're cleaning up a pack, and if someone pulls ahead of me on threat so much that I can't get it back as a paladin, I don't have an active taunt. So I'm like, if you get threat, you have it. So enjoy.
Totoro?
Yeah, similar take to what's been said before. I think what Hap was talking about, the communication between the tank and the healer is huge. I find that if I've got my 3 DPS, I'm going to coach them to say, "Hey, play differently," or like do something else. It kind of often has like the opposite effect. I feel like people aren't going into a dungeon to learn from other people very much. So I kind of check in with the healer and say, hey, are we cool with this? Like, are you feeling stressed? Or like, are we going fast? Are we going slow? And if the healer's saying, yeah, I still have all my cooldowns, I still have all my potions, like it's fine, then I'm happy with it. Again, early days, early dungeons, and the times that DPS have pulled, it's been mobs that they can usually handle on their own. So
I just want to go down. I want to go down a quick tangent. Character, we're going to come to you, and you'll finish us up on this topic with your story. I just want to go down a quick tangent back off what Totoro just said, because if anyone else has anything to say on this, please do chime in. I've definitely seen these comments coming in on the subreddit, and I'm loving all this extra flavor that Hardcore WoW is bringing back to the player base, because I experienced one of those moments, Totoro, where people are wary of like telling other people how to play in WoW usually anyway, because, you know, even if you say it in a super nice fashion, more often than not, you're getting a fucking toxic reply or getting told to go fuck yourself and blah, 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 which, you know, is somewhat understandable at times, but like, you know, if you're in a dungeon with one life on the line, you're like, oh, hey, buddy, I noticed you're not using ability X. Do you mind hitting that button? It'll make things go a bit smoother. And they're like, fuck, you can't. Oh, rightio. Okay, here we go. But like, I had a moment where I was doing the elite quests in Stromgarde the other day with I was a bit scared because, and this is where the scary moment's coming from, random group, complete pug, no comms, no nothing. We go into Stromgarde Keep and do, you know, auto and all that shit, and I'm tanking. And like the whole way through, we've got a rogue in the group who is just allergic to kick. Just every fucking, he had 10 to 12 opportunities to kick on a mob, never fucking did it. Now, I know you can say, mate, those mobs are so easy, you don't need to fucking kick, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, just fucking do it. Just make, you know, your tank feel a little bit easier and all that kind of shit. And at one point, after like playing with these guys for like 10 minutes, I was about to say to this rogue in probably a nicer way, but like, mate, are you allergic to kick? Like if you could kick, it would really help me out so I don't have to like worry about the shield bash, and I'd rather use that rage on a Sunder armor. But like I pulled back because I was like, fuck, if I say something, the prick might go around and pull 10 mobs and try and wipe me, which stories like that are coming in on the subreddit of like people clapping back at others, telling them how to play by just intentionally wiping them or something. Have you guys had any kind of, like, do you have anything to say on that or any experiences with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, 100%. I played a lot of Overwatch last few years, and it's a team-based game, and it's notorious for people being toxic. So I feel like I've picked up a lot of lessons from it, where sometimes if you're like, hey, like switch Hanzo, you're not doing anything, they'll just take it so offensively and just intentionally lose and wipe the whole group for you and destroy any chance that you have of winning. So I feel like just keeping quiet is better. I think if you got a good tank and a good healer in WoW, you can make up for one or two even bad DPS.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It depends on the room too. And it depends on your guild as well. If you're in a guild group versus a pug.
Oh yeah, no, of course.
What type of other people, you know, what type of people you have in your group. You just gotta, it's a social game. You gotta read the room and have a little bit of emotional intelligence.
Oh, 100%. And people are obviously going to be harsher with strangers. Like, I'm not going to get in a pushing up peace balloon group and be like, fuck, Hap, are you drunk? Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Probably.
Well, I think it speaks to the sort of the incentives in hardcore too, though, right? Like one of the reasons that I think people say that hardcore feels a lot more like the original experience of WoW is just because the incentives are lined up that way. Like people don't like trust is so important, and people don't want to run with pugs necessarily that they don't know, or they don't want to like they want to, you know, keep their friends list full of people that they want to run with again. So they want to like write down a name or like avoid a name or like make those connections. And that I think really contributes to a good MMO.
100%. Put a pin in that. We're going to get character story, and then we'll come back to that one. Cleaver's character finishes up on the what are we doing here? Marry, fuck, kill option.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel a little bit different about it than these guys. I feel like if I'm losing aggro, that's 100% on me. and that I should do something different. I actually have two stories regarding that, though. For example, like with my warrior, we were doing a dead mine, and right before Sneed, I kept having issues with holding aggro because I'm not used to the whole, two-handed sword, arms leveling as a tank. I'm still trying to learn that setup and figure that out. So there were definitely several times where I was losing aggro, and it was quite frustrating for myself because I never really looked at it from the aspect of like an overzealous DPS. It was more like I'm failing as a tank and not able to hold aggro, which is, my primary role is to keep aggro on me. But the bit of a story that I was going towards, I actually was in Shadowfang Keep with my Paladin. And as you're aware, Paladins don't have a taunt. And the last boss in Shadowfang Keep has an thing that he does, Archmage Arguel, where he'll teleport, and then when he teleports, he drops all aggro.
Yep.
And the issue we had there was a paladin that was also with me, that was Rhett, just immediately jumped on the boss, tried DPSing the boss right away when he would move around, and did not allow me to gain any threat back. And he actually died because of that.
Oh. Yeah, the threat drops and all the threat drops that come later in the game, they are going to get really spicy, and like you'll have to, people who are not looking up these dungeons in advance. I know everyone wants to laugh and go, mate, it's classic, it's fucking piece of piss, whatever. And I know that there's not many mechanics on some of these bosses, even in late game, but like I'm still looking this shit up and just being like, I just want to know if there's anything, just to keep an eye out for. And something like a threat drop that, a few of the bosses have, obviously, is pretty fucking key to, let's say to the group, like, hey guys, FYI, it happens in like ZG and shit later on as well, but like FYI, there is a moment where there's going to be a threat drop. If you value your life, don't fucking hit the mob for 3 seconds once that happens.
Watch how many rogues die to the penultimate boss in Strat dead, because he does a threat drop and he smacks the second. I've seen highlights where the second person on the threat meter knows about it, drops threat, and then the third person just gets dumped on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that where he does the stun on the tank right before it?
Yeah, the golem, the like abomination boss.
Yeah. So what you got? What is it? You got to keep someone tanky on the second spot, or
just get away for at least until the tank can pick him back up.
It also kind of leads back to what I was mentioning earlier, and somebody else had said that, with my Paladin, I was a part of that initial first wave of people that were leveling and doing dungeons as a Paladin. A lot of people say that Paladins can't tank. Paladins are actually pretty good tank, and I did way better on my Paladin tank than I did on my Warrior, and now I'm, testing it out on my Druid as well. And I plan on making another Paladin tank. But with that initial wave, everybody was more responsive to the fact that we were going to go slow, everybody was going to be safe, where with my warrior I was a little bit further behind when I started leveling, and I also was leveling with people that were on their third, fourth, fifth attempt at that point. And when I would go to dungeons with them, they would try and just push the dungeon as quickly as they could, and that made the situation a lot worse, with the fact that trying to level as an arms warrior while tanking with two-handed sword, is just not something that I was used to. I mean, I was continuously losing aggro and struggling to, keep the mobs together.
Clevis, remind me, what did I tell you to put a pin in as what that you were last talking about?
I was just talking about the incentives and how people, how trust is such an important factor.
Oh, yes. Okay, very good. So, we'll get into the class specific stuff very soon, guys, but while we're still sort of talking somewhat generically, how do you guys go with, I mean, the elephant in the room really is, pug grouping, which is a staple of MMO gameplay. Of course, the aim is to meet new people, make new friends, tackle content with people, and establish those relationships. Hardcore is really put that to the test, that old notion, in a way that I've never felt MMO friendships to be more valuable than they have been right now in Hardcore. Like I said, I've been absolutely blessed, and I feel like I'm so lucky to be able to almost play a different way to how so many others are playing the game, in that I've had all these friends that I've made through the show level up with me. We all do. It's the same core group. We do the dungeons together. We all fucking trust each other implicitly, like to no end. We've got each other's backs. And we're fine. And we all get together. We meet up and like there's no drama. Most people, don't get me wrong. Obviously, some people are playing with friends or playing with their guild or whatnot, but most people are having to pug as well at a certain point. I've not had to. We picked up our first pug player last night in RFD, and we had one DPS join us, a Paladin, and just before he joined up, we can laugh about it, but my group, I said to them and they all agreed. We're like, look, we don't know this guy. I'm sure he'll be fine. But if he fucking farts, like, let me know about it. Like, everyone keep an eye on this guy because we don't know him and we don't know if he's going to do anything crazy. How have you guys gone with the pug experience? Are you loving it or is it a little bit stressful at times?
I'm loving it. Did DM pug and did Stockades pug. A little bit different experience. DM was a little rougher, had a hunter that wasn't paying attention, couldn't really talk to him. But with Stockades, I was really apprehensive going into it, and I just kind of let him with a lot of chat, giving directions. And about halfway through, realized that folks were just kind of following, going, and assisting me on whatever target I was on, and we just kind of rolled it for well.
Yeah, I've had experiences both ways. I mean, I've had some dungeons and I've pugged quite a bit. I like to do dungeon every single day, and I'm trying to level up 3 tanks, a paladin, a warrior, and a druid. So I do have the opportunity to get into a lot of groups, especially as I've been leveling more. And I've had some groups that have gone very smoothly and have respected the tank and the healer. And I've had some groups where, the DPS think they're leading the group and they'll try and just push it as hard as they can. But I am very quick to put somebody on ignore, and I think that's a huge thing, especially in hardcore with there only being one server, and it's really community driven. When you experience somebody that's a bad player or does something wrong, if they get put on ignore very rapidly, they lose the ability to start joining more and more groups, and that name becomes known of like, oh, that's a bad player. And that's been a big thing for me is as I've been leveling, I've just been putting people on ignore that have been almost risking my life or have, I've seen gotten other people killed just because I know that I don't want to ever group up with them later, because if they're doing that, what happens if they do it when I'm level 60?
Anyone else on the pug experience so far?
Yeah, I'd love to speak. I feel like this is I've walked into one of those post-apocalyptic kind of zombie films where the world is dangerous, but the people potentially could be even more dangerous than the harsh around us. And you always I take a screenshot of my group before we go into the dungeon every time, and it's always that wondering, like, you have that chat before. It took us 2 minutes to form the group for Shadowfang today, and then 20 minutes for everyone to eventually make their way to the instance after getting quests and retraining spells, whatever. And it's just, I don't know, as soon as we enter in the first couple of pulls, I'm sweating a little bit. Like, are we going to get some, like, total wacko that's going to pull the whole instance? Like, I don't know. And I kind of live for that thrill, honestly. It makes the game more fun for me. It makes the world feel more dangerous. Even though I know that because I'm running ungilded, and I don't know anyone on the server at all, so all my runs are pugs. I don't have a single friend on the server either. Just this total lone warrior.
Oh, Totoro, we got to get you over on fucking Defias with the pup crew. Come on, man.
I've played in the same guild since 2019, and they ended up rolling on Defias as well, and they're on Alliance. But I was like, I just literally can't level another Alliance character. I got to go Horde.
Fair enough.
So I'm kind of taking this on my own option, and it's been pretty fun. My one bad experience was actually in Whaling Caverns, and it was the tank, and we figured it out by about the second or third pull. So Whaling Caverns, you have this kind of walk down, and then there's this first room where you've got, I think, a group, and then a patrol, and another group really close, and a raptor that could potentially pull another one. So the tank pulled them all in the first run. Like, we had literally 6 elites on us within the first 10 minutes of going into the dungeon. And we kind of made it through, and it was like, oh man, that was pretty hairy, pretty bad experience. We keep walking along the side, and then he does it again. And in the second, or like the second big kind of complex pull, and I just said, I'm out. I was healing on the shaman, and I said, sorry, no, I just don't. It's not worth it. It's not worth the risk. And the druid tank was like kind of give us a bit of flack. He's like, "Oh, you guys are so soft. Like that was so handled. Like we can totally get through it." Like, and he was probably right. Like we survived, but like, is it worth the risk?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I love it. I love your dystopian analogy. I think Clevis has probably always seen himself as a bit of a Daryl Dixon type. So we might throw it over to Clevis for this one. But it's funny because we got Josh G in chat, who that's what I was hissing, laughing at, where it really is true. Like the pug experience, he's saying, I too like to live dangerously by doing a lot of pug dungeons. So I agree with the Austin Powers reference. Clevis, mate, let's get into the class shit. And even though even though I'm playing a warrior, I am very interested to hear from the paladins and the druids. But we'll touch on warrior first. Mate, Clevis, have you... I don't even know what to say to you because you're such an experienced warrior, you know, one of the fucking best tanks in the fucking world, blah, 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 blah. And here I am as the rookie. Mate, let me ask you this. I have loved the warrior tanking experience through the early goings. And in hardcore, I really do understand now why everyone says warrior is the best tank. The amount of flexibility I've got up my sleeve. It's like, oh, did taunt resist? No worries, mocking blow. Oh, I need to fucking taunt something else? Oh, fuck it, yeah, I'll throw a challenging shout out there. Like having the 3 taunts effectively I'm loving life. Mate, is there any criticism you've got or maybe traps that young warriors might not realize while tanking to keep an eye out for through the hardcore leveling experience?
I think for leveling up warriors, I think the first piece of advice I guess I have is just that your abilities aren't like it's not always going to be the same as you level up. Like some of your abilities aren't very good at different levels, and then you reach sort of power spikes and they get really good. Like the perfect example maybe is sweeping strikes, right? Like sweeping strikes is an incredible tanking ability, truthfully, and lets you essentially two-hand tank. But you don't get it until you're at least level 30, maybe 35, and so prior to that point, two-hand tanking is actually kind of bad. And realistically, all of your best abilities are just whatever the abilities you most recently learned that happen to be high threat abilities. So it might be Revenge, it might be Shield Bash, it might be Battle Shout. Your best way through a dungeon might literally just be spamming Battle Shout, depending on what level you're at. And so a lot of people, I think, don't know that, don't get that, and sort of fall into traps of just playing one certain way as they level up and not sort of changing their playstyle.
Mate, on that, it's not to sort of toot my own horn, but I'll lightly toot my own horn, where I've been told by my group that I'm playing and they don't care because everything's been going fine, but someone mentioned the other day that I'm playing a horrific tanking spec, that like obviously it's, you're leveling, who gives a fuck, you do what it takes to level, but in terms of like tanking dungeons, my spec is less than ideal, and that's totally fine. I'm split between Arms and Fury right now. I went down Arms in order to get stance dancing shit and improved overpower, and then I'm back in Fury, dumping everything in Fury. And I'm dual wielding. I'm not two-handing. It's one of those things where so many people say about the warrior, they go, obviously, no one levels as prot, blah, 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 but they go, oh, sweeping strikes, like tanking dungeons with sweeping strikes, it's just the bee's knees. And the guys said to me, they were like, to be honest with you, the fact that you don't have sweeping strikes and you've, like, for the most part held threat as well as you has been a really nice experience. And I've not seen it as a problem not having sweeping strikes, but like the only time that I've lightly struggled with threat is if my rogues pop their Blade Flurry, and now I don't have sweeping strikes, and here I am slightly struggling on a couple of mobs in a 4 or 5 pack to get threat, but it's all good. Do you sort of see sweeping strikes as like because my advice would be to people, like, don't feel like I've been really hammering, like, don't feel the need to go Arms. If you want to level Fury for fun, do it. You can tank perfectly fine with Fury. Do you subscribe to that theory or not as much, Clevis?
I would say that you're missing a tool in the toolbox, right? It's not the end of the world. And like, you're still a warrior. You still have, 3 taunts. You still have all of the rest of your tools. And you're in your 40s right now. So you have, you have
Plate.
Whirlwind as well. Like you have a lot of these other tools for AoE threat as well. So you're not really missing all that much. But realistically, if you didn't have tactical mastery, I would say you're doing something wrong.
Yeah,
that's really kind of a necessity to tank on a warrior. But other than tactical mastery, there really aren't, I wouldn't say mandatory talents. But if you haven't tried two-hand sweeping strikes, Josh, you should try it. It's really fun.
I feel like I'm cheating because I went so hard on the like, fuck the meta, I'm not doing Mortal Strike, I'm going to go Fury. And I've got Bonebiter now, so I could like respec and be a brilliant fucking two-handed spec. But I'm just like, I threw on Bonebiter for 20 minutes the other day, and I'm so sorry. This is why I say Fury is so fun. Two-handed weapon on a warrior is so fucking boring to me. Like going away and making a coffee in the time it takes before your next swing. I'm just like, I don't find that fun. I just rather see animations going ballistic, two weapons just going nuts. Even if they're missing, I don't give a fuck. It looks fun. It seems engaging to me. That's just the weirdo that I am. Let me hear from you other warriors on this one. Tell me, guys, are you having fun? What have you got any wild specs? Who else is Totoro? You're a warrior, right? No,
that's right.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing it kind of stupidly because honestly, hearing you on the podcast before talking about, hey, I'm going to do something interesting, kind of made my gears start turning too. So I ended up putting my first 5 points into anticipation, increasing my defense skill by 10.
Oh yeah.
Because everyone is saying, hey, like, don't fight mobs 2 levels above you.
Yeah.
Have a bad time. So that's what I started, and then I ended up getting Last Stand as just like another oh shit button.
Oh, I thought about it.
Yeah, so that's my first 11 points, and I'm dumping the rest in Fury right now. I've got 5 into Cruelty, and I'm level 25, so that's all of them. But it's been fine. Like I'm still killing stuff fast. Got good weapons, and I've put sharpening stones on, and I feel like I'm traveling or training even faster than my shaman at the same level, so I don't feel like it's a huge downside at this point.
Mate, 100%. If I wasn't doing dungeons or tanking dungeons, I know this sounds ridiculous to all the long-time warriors out there, but like I keep saying, like hardcore, I'm really enjoying that hardcore makes you think a little bit differently. I thought about respecking and doing what you're doing. I'd be like, mate, hardcore, I'm going and getting Last Stand first as a warrior, then I'll go Fury. Like, that's something I think would be fun.
I think I've used it twice. So,
but did it save you? Did it save your life?
No.
It's still good to have.
But it's nice to have,
Yeah.
In case you need it.
Well, this is my whole thing, and I'm happy to get Clevis, or any of you other warriors. I would love for you to absolutely fucking hammer me, giggity, about my Piercing Howl commentary. Because I've been so, like, I've just had this massive boner over Piercing Howl, just saying, like, how good it is. Why not take the extra piece of utility? Clevis, as you were saying with Sweeping Strikes, all you're doing is denying yourself a tool in your toolkit. And I feel that way about Piercing Howl to the Leveling Warrior, where I'm like, why are you denying yourself the only tool of escape that you really get if you do get in a bit of multi-mob trouble? I wouldn't say Piercing Howl has necessarily been the reason my life has been saved, but it's fucking pulled me out a lot of that could have been dicey situations.
Do you want me to comment on that? I
would love
like
you
Piercing
to.
Howl. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, Piercing Howl is
Oh,
great.
your team Piercing Howl.
It's mandatory to all PvP. It's mandatory to like every PvP spec. I don't love it for tanking. Like I hear what you're saying as an escape.
No, I don't use it as tank. I'm talking like when you're outside the dungeon.
Yeah. No, it's great. I'll inject my commentary. The one talent that I got this time that I wouldn't normally get in my build has been improved demo shout.
Oh baby, isn't it good?
Yeah, and I feel like that actually has saved my life a couple of times.
Nice. I love Imp Demo Shot. I went it straight away as well. And this is the fucking stupid thing that I do, Clevis. And I want to throw it to another warrior after this. Sorry. People have noticed my streams. I open with Imp Demo Shout on every mob, no matter what. It's just something I like to do. It's a waste of rage to a lot of people, but I'm like, give me that insurance policy.
I think that's the thing people fail to realize is that, again, we're playing hardcore and you only have one life. So even though it seems like it's a waste of rage, it can be very useful, especially if you're pulling a pack where there's like 4, 5, 6 mobs in there.
Well, that's the thing. It's those situations where like I open with it, and if for some reason a couple of mobs decide to join the party out of nowhere, well, I know that initial mob I had has been wailing on me the whole time with Imp Demo Shout. I leave the fight at 20%. I'm like, oh, fuck, that would have been interesting if I hadn't have had Imp Demo Shout on him. I don't know. But anyway, so who else is playing Warrior here who we haven't heard from? Ren? You're playing Paladin, right, Ren?
Yes. I'm not a warrior enjoyer. I'm definitely a hyper.
That's right. We'll get to the Paladins. Ochoa, you're a warrior?
Yeah, I think, Josh, what you said with the demo shout is, one of the things I really like about the warrior class of it's just got such a diverse tool set that it really allows, your different skill ceilings to really show through. As a tank, if you're demo shouting and thunderclapping a lot, it's noticeable that you're taking less damage to your healers and whatnot. And if you do that every time, I think you can really shine as a warrior tank to other people that you're utilizing all those little things in your class to really, really push it and make it easier for the healer to do.
I'll say one last point about warrior before we move on to paladin. Look, and Ochoa, DeToro, Clevis, all of you can chime in on this one, whoever's got something to say. My struggles as a first-time warrior have mostly been with dealing with... I love stance dancing. It is so much more fun than I fucking thought it would be. And I'm really enjoying... Like, people watching my stream have been like, oh, look at you as the first-time warrior fucking getting yourself stuck into the stance dancing. That's great to see. I really do enjoy it, but I'm a long way away from completely knowing what the fuck I'm doing. The struggle has been... dealing with priorities in terms of, once you get that charge off or once you shoot that bow, what comes next? Let's talk about the situation where you get the charge off. I'm like, I've been fucking up because I've been like, get the imp demo shout out first, then do the thunderclap, then start sundering. And I probably have that ass backwards where it's like I should be charging in and just start sundering, and then you can do the AoE shit later on. How do you guys like to tackle it? And once you charge in, what is your general priority? Ochoa or DeToro, you go for it.
Yeah, he's probably got way more hours in Warrior than I do.
I like going and throwing a demo. I mean, it depends truthfully what the pull is too. If you're charging in and there's 4 or 5 different mobs, I'm probably going for a demo shout and then thunderclap and then going to sunders.
Okay.
If it's 1 or 2 and I know I put a skull down and I know people are going to be going on that guy quicker, I might try and get more threat on him quicker than doing a demo clap and then a demo shout and then thunderclap for my first 2 globals.
Clevis, how about you? You charge into the 5-pack. What's your first 3 abilities?
It depends obviously on your build, and it depends on how big the pack is. But I think everybody's mostly right. I don't want to say right, but I think my priorities would be pretty similar. You want to get everything on your threat table immediately. So hitting everything with something. So if it's more than 4 mobs, you probably demo shout first. And then I'm probably immediately dancing to something else. And it depends on what it is. So if you have sweeping strikes, you want to get that up going and then dance over to maybe to even Zerker to to Whirlwind, something like that, and then go to defensive depending. So you want to get as much threat on everything as possible.
Too easy.
But you definitely want everything on your threat table at first. So if it's 4 mobs, I might charge in thunderclap, dance. If it's more than 4 mobs, I might charge in demo shout. Dance.
Too easy, mate. I'll just jump in. Hap, you've got to go. Thank you so much for joining us. Give a big shout out for pushing up Peace Bloom.
Yeah, we have a great guild. Anybody in here can talk us up about pushing up Peace Bloom. We got a great community, and we're looking forward to 60 content. We got about 11 or 12 60s, and we'll have a bunch more here in the next week or two. And yeah, we're just kind of trucking along. We have end game aspirations, but no timelines right now.
But those raids will start forming sooner rather than later, I would think.
Yeah, we have people chomping at the bit to see what's next on the horizon. So
very good. You're doing an amazing job, mate. Keep it up.
Oh, I appreciate it. You're only as good as the people around you.
Very good, very good. All right, mate, you go have dinner with the family. We'll talk to you later.
I think one last thing we could tack onto that, Josh, before we move on to maybe another class is the order of abilities, for me anyway, when I was doing a couple dungeons, was related to how much rage I had. And I found that my rage pooling was quite a strategic lever that I could be pulling between packs. So I wouldn't, as soon as I felt like I was above threat on DPS, I would just auto attack until the next pack. So that way I could start off with, 60 or 70 rage and make sure I get those 3 demo show spams or whatever it would be, tab thunder, tab thunder, tab thunder. So it would really depend on how much rage I'd have in a lot of the ways. And I hadn't really thought about that for Warrior before, pooling rage. So it felt like it was like discovering a whole new depth to the class where I was like, man, this is actually kind of fun.
The rage pooling is the one thing. So sorry, let me just say this before you jump in. The rage pooling is the one thing I probably have struggled with, and I've talked to my group about this. I've been really, really trying to hit my mates up for feedback and being like, mate, please just be brutal. I need to know how I'm going as a tank and what I can change to get better because this is important. And the one bit of constructive criticism that I've got from the guys was that, and they were very, very nice in saying it, was like, look, if there's one thing you probably should start thinking about, it's rage pooling, because you're almost being too careful. We're waiting a bit between each pack, and like you've got pumpers with you. You can afford to kind of go in with the rage you've got, and it'll set you up so well for that next pack. Whereas I'm letting all my rage go down because I'm so terrified of being prepared when I don't necessarily need to be as overly cautious. Was someone else going to say something? Ren, was that you before?
No.
Oh, sorry. I thought someone was going to jump in.
I'll jump in actually in regards to tanking. So I've been trying to level a warrior for tanking. So are you guys going directly into like tactical mastery and anger management, or is rage generation been generally pretty good that it's not a concern?
I started with my 5% crit, then straight down to tactical mastery.
Yeah, I typically do what Josh said there, yeah.
I've been playing without tactical mastery and just staying in defensive stance, but getting that extra rage through blood rage, through the defensive or the prot tree, and trying to really manage the rage with the pooling between pulls has been really key. So I really have just been staying in defensive stance basically most of the instance.
All right. Does that
I find some? Oh, sorry. I find some rage management not only just stop attacking, pulling your rage or whatever, but in the time your healer's drinking and stuff. I mean, there's critters usually everywhere in dungeons and different places. Smack some critters and keep your rage pool up and different things to help manage it, because every little bit helps usually.
Too easy, guys. Let's move on. I might have some more questions later. We'll bring up, but let's move on to the Paladin. I don't want to alienate the other classes as well. We got Paladin and Druid to get through. All right, you Paladins. I was a bee's dick away from rolling a Paladin in hardcore WoW first, but I just fell in love with the Warrior about a week or two before the servers launched, so that's why I went Warrior. But I really wanted to challenge myself and do the whole like, I'm gonna be a Paladin tank. I'm going to fucking, back myself and show people the Paladin tanks are fine. Let's rock and roll. You see all the comments in the subreddit from people going, mate, there's no fucking way I'm going in a dungeon with a fucking Paladin tank, blah, blah, blah. But then, we all see that in the hands of a competent player, Paladin tanks are perfectly fine. However, talk to me. We'll start with you, Pyrulin, and then we'll hear from Ren. Sorry, Ren, you were a Paladin or a Druid?
Mostly Paladin, a little bit.
Yeah, too easy. Pyrulin, kick us off about fighting against the stereotypes of Paladin tanks in vanilla and how you've gone with it.
Yeah, so the stereotypes of Paladin in vanilla were, they were a lot stronger in 2019. So far with hardcore Classic, I haven't seen as much of an issue with the stereotypes. if I've reached out for to take a group to take a dungeon or to do elites out in the world, it's been no issue. No one's really looked at it.
People are just happy to see a tank.
Yeah, it really is. With looking for Stockade's group, I kind of missed the curve in pushing up Peace Bloom. Between people restarting and people going ahead in the 40s, 50s, and so I wound up reinstalling LFG Bulletin Board, pulled it up, got it configured for Classic, and every single entry was looking for tank, looking for tank, looking for tank. So you show up and say, "Hey, I can tank." They go, "All right, let's go."
Very good. And once you're in the dungeon, have you found, like, again, it's obviously, it goes without saying, it's so famous, the lack of a taunt. Do you find that it's just no issue whatsoever, even in hardcore? It doesn't bother you. You can get your snap threat back with your judgment when you need. You pull with your grenades or whatever, and it's totally fine. Or have you actually not necessarily regretted rolling a paladin, but found a lot of moments where you're like, oh my God, I wish I had XYZ?
My one regret was starting out blacksmithing. I got to level 17 and went, fuck that. Dropped it, went back to engineering.
Yeah,
you got to have it for pulling.
Is it essential? Is it like if you are a paladin tank without engineering, that's the person that everyone's complaining about?
Probably so. You're going to wind up body pulling extra stuff that you don't want. You're going to wind up taking extra hits where you're out of line of sight of the healer because you got to run up, get within 10 yards for judgment. That's where you wind up messing up your strength and dazed. Your half health, your healers chugged through a bunch of mana. It's a bad start to the fight. So yeah, if you're going to tank on a top paladin, get engineering.
Fair enough. Ren, thoughts?
Well, on the engineering thing, first of all, I definitely agree with that. I started out as an alchemy Andy, and just because I happened to get lucky with a swiftness potion recipe drop back in unofficial and solo self found, that was a big deal, especially for paladins that are the proverbial wheelchair of the game. Having that escape out in the open world was really nice. So I always went alch, and then the first time I ever went NG on a paladin, that was like my highest record to date in hardcore. And it just helps so much. It gives you so many extra tools that the paladin specifically is missing in the ranged pulling and out in the open world split pulling, things like that. It just helps a lot. But as far as going back to your original question, the stigma or whatever you want to call it around paladin taking, I kind of like Powerlin was saying, like in hardcore, there's definitely a lot less of that sentiment going around, just because one, as stated, people are just grateful for a tank. They don't really care. And hardcore is such a game mode that relies so heavily on game knowledge. So realistically, I mean, the fact that we don't have a taunt sucks, but if you know what fights have threat drops, just, work around that as needed. If you can't tank a fight because you don't have a taunt, then that's fine. Just have a backup plan or have a backup tank for that specific dungeon or that whatever. So realistically, like, I think a lot of people have kind of cooled on the paladin hate over the past few years, but it was definitely strong. I mean, I remember back when Countdown was first getting started, and we were counting down to original classic. There was a lot of paladin tank haters out there.
Yeah, there sure was. Can I take you down a quick tangent, Ren, just in regards to the Alchemy Andy thing? Look, I was relatively critical of Alchemy coming into hardcore, and I went as far as saying, fuck, if you better have a fucking good reason to take Alchemy coming into hardcore, because if they're going to open up the AH and trading, that shit is going to be readily available. It's going to be fucking cheap. It's going to be out there in an abundance. Go take a fucking profession like engineering that you can't get the shit you need off the auction house, and just make your money and buy pots and elixirs and stuff, and you'll be fine. I've not regretted that for a second. The best fucking decision in my mind that I made was not going Alchemy. But for people out there that have gone Alchemy, and don't get me wrong, there is money to be made in the Alchemy market if you get the right recipe drops or whatnot, I'm sure, or late game Alchemy, I'm sure. But for the most part, all that early to mid game Alchemy, I mean, that stuff is fucking cheap as chips. How have you found it, and what kind of advice would you have for people in regards to it?
So when I said Alchemy Andy, I was talking about, years ago in unofficial hardcore. So
right.
I definitely wouldn't take it, especially as a Paladin tank now, just because, like you said, it's also readily available. And in early hardcore days, like even just finding healing potions and stuff like that was a big deal. But as we all kind of fleshed out the game more and figured out where a lot of these random vendors peppered throughout the world are that sold these really nice healing pots, and a lot of the scroll vendors and stuff like that too, alchemy started to lose value. And now in official, where we just have access to the AH, it's definitely not as valuable until, like you said, you get to late game. Obviously, whoever starts peddling Petri flasks first is going to be swimming in gold.
Oh yeah.
But but other than that, yeah, I would definitely rather have the exclusive engineering items that you can't get without it. And I know we'll get to Druid later, but my Druids are the only ones that I still go alchemy on, just because of the whole shifting issue, but we'll talk about that later.
Is there an alchemist here that can tell me to go fuck myself? No alchemists. There you go. All right, maybe that's indicative. But like, obviously there's a lot of them out there because there's so much of this shit on the auction house. Very good. We've got done in chat saying, yes, go fuck yourself, Josh. They're an alchemist. Very good. Well, I appreciate your service because you are supplying the auction house with all the stuff that I do need. And Pube Sniffer is saying he's an alchemist as well. Oh, actually, no, he's saying he's not an alchemist, but he just wants to tell me to go fuck myself. So that counts. Thank you, Pube Sniffer. Absolutely. Guys, still on the Paladin line. What am I missing here? Are there any dungeons that you can see coming up on the horizon that do give you any cause for concern as a Paladin tank?
For me, at a very low level, Shadowfang Keep. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, the last boss, as he ports around, drops aggro, and it's very hard to be able to regenerate threat off of him, especially if your DPS is unaware of the threat drop and they immediately want to go back in and start, getting those high DPS numbers out.
Well, on Argyle in particular, you do have the issue of getting back in range of him if he's just teleported or anything. But if you save your judgment, you've really got a pretty good threat spike there, which I might even argue that warriors don't have as good a threat spike. So they do have to rely on the taunt to pick it back up whenever your DPS gets there first. But with the threat spike on judgment, I don't find threat drops to be a huge issue.
Can I say the dumbest thing I'll say? I'm pretty sure the jump is too big. If you were to jump off one ledge in the direction of the other that he teleports, could you mid-jump get off a 10-yard judgment, or is it too far of a gap?
You might be able to. I haven't tried it.
to
the other guy's jump and be like, yeah, we can make it. Let's do it.
And I think it kind of leads to well, like what you were saying earlier, Countdown, going in and researching each of the dungeons and seeing what those bosses do and what can happen in situations like that. I never looked up SFK to even know that the boss drops aggro and does that until we were there in the middle of it happening. And I'm like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Yeah, Pube Sniffer, it's absolutely a name for the bushes moment, 100%. Character, I'll keep you going on the Paladin side of things. What do you feel like you have to just talk to your group a lot more and manage people far more than you would have to than if you were playing a warrior as a Paladin?
And I actually feel that I had a lot easier time tanking as a Paladin. It was a little bit of nerve-wracking because you, of course, initially have to go into Holy for Consecration Aura.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting that approved Righteous Fury off the bat. And so with my Paladin, I did have to mention in the groups like, hey, I don't have that improvement yet. Please just, be a little bit careful, things like that. And like I said, with that first initial wave, everybody we know was understanding. So with Paladin, I never really had an issue holding threat because once you go in and you target Skull and you lay that Consecration Aura, by the time Skull is dead, you've already generated enough threat off the other mobs that you're holding it pretty well. But like I said, there are times where you do need to have the ability to have a taunt, and without having it is frustrating at times. But overall, especially once you're able to start getting into the improved Righteous Fury, tanks are Paladin tanks are very viable at that point. It becomes really easy to tank as a Paladin, and I had a lot easier time tanking on my Paladin and a lot smoother experience on my Paladin than I ever did on my Warrior.
Well, it's definitely like you drop that consecrate and it's great, but I find that I don't find because I've not done it. But do you find that consecrate's great and everything if people are respecting target markers, but if for some fucking reason people aren't hitting skull, do you find that consecrate is relatively inconsequential or not?
In the initial levels, I did, especially before I started going into improved Righteous Fury. There were definitely several times where I would lay Consecration Aura, and there would have DPS that would immediately go on something that I wasn't focus targeting, and so I would have problems where the mob would drop off. But if you're quick with it, and you're able to save. My apologies, I'm forgetting the ability. Your judgment. If you save your judgment, and you see that somebody pulls threat, you can quickly tab target over to that character and drop your judgment on them and be able to pull threat back quickly. So that does help in those regards. But if it is a situation where you do have to taunt and you've lost a lot of threat, you do struggle there.
Ren, Pyrelin, what else can we say about the Paladin before we move on? Tell me about any other stories or struggles or moments of victory that you felt as a Paladin tank.
The one trump card you always have against eager DPS, especially if they're melee, is you can stop them from DPSing. Just throw a bop on them. They'll learn real quick. They'll either change their behavior or they'll go make a cancel aura macro.
Do you find a lot more pressure to be on bop awareness sort of alert, given that it's hardcore?
Absolutely. With hardcore, I very much want to save it for the healer. If I fuck something up, like going back to the Deadmines run, I wasn't paying attention, pulled when I had a renew on me. And so everything on Van Cleef went straight to my consecration, didn't take a tick of it, went straight to the healer, pop on the healer. But at the same time, you also want to save that, especially with engineering, you want to save that bop for if shit hits the fan. You want to be able to hit your macro, drop the target, then you throw a bop on it so that your group can GTFO.
Yeah.
So you really have to pay attention to where you use it.
There was a clip in today in an upload, or yesterday in an upload on one of the Hardcore Death clip channels of a group doing Sunken Temple, and they're up to Aranicus or whatever, and the priest healer, there's a French priest healer, a lot of French clips being thrown up on the Death clip channel, just screaming for a bop from his paladin, and the paladin wasn't the one that was slept or anything, and he's just going bop, 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 bop for like 8 seconds, and the bop never came, and he dies, and he's just like dumbfounded on stream, just going, what the fuck just happened? Someone is in this group that could have literally saved my life, and they didn't have the awareness to get that spell off. It would be gutting if I was playing a paladin to know that I could have saved someone, but I'd either forgot about it or dropped the ball or whatever. I feel like paladin does bring a lot of pressure with it.
Yeah, that would definitely be I'm going to log off for a few days and come back to it when I'm not kicking myself for it.
Ren, how about you?
I guess kind of just an overarching theme of paladin tanking, or just paladin in general, is that a lot of stuff with the class has to do with like kind of mindset. Just because it's a mana user as opposed to rage. To me personally, I find that changes a lot of the dynamic of how it actually plays and the pace, which we've talked about in the past, and kind of your tempo with your healer. But like your mana bar is just as if not more important than your health bar, and that's like kind of my like something that's always ringing in the back of my head, especially we're talking about consecration. It's such an expensive spell if you're dropping max ranks of it, which you shouldn't be doing all the time, but I don't know, there's a lot of different, it's a hybrid class, there's a lot of different ways you can play it. Of course we're talking about tanking, you do typically drop down to consecration. I've seen a few people not do that and do okay. I wouldn't recommend it, but there's lots of different routes too, and people, I mean, this is hardcore, and this is like we're talking about leveling primarily here, so like most people want to level as ret, like you can tank as ret, it's not a big deal. Imp Righteous Fury is amazing for sure, but it's by no means necessary. It just makes it's quality of life. It makes things way easier. So a lot of people kind of have differing opinions on what's best to go down, and if you really want to focus more on tanking, I know some of us here are running dungeons every single day, which I mean that could be reason enough to go down the prot tree, but it's people like me who I don't get as much time to play each day, so I spend a lot of my time in the open world, and even for tanking, there's some nice pickups there. Like you can't discount Imp Red Aura and some other really great tools. So just a really great diverse class. And on the BOP subject, I mean, there's a lot of utility, and there's a lot of weird implications that come with that utility too. The one on my last Paladin run on unofficial, earlier this year, I guess, I was in a BFD group, and it was the only dungeon that I didn't tank on that run. I was healing, and we had another Paladin tanking, and he forgot that his bubble just makes all the threat go away. So those were the moments where I, like, after that dungeon, I was just like, man, I'm never not tanking again, because it was definitely a panicked moment. I ended up having to lay on hands one of our DPS and all kinds of just stuff like that. So just remember what your abilities do, and you'll be fine.
Too easy. Now let's move on to the Druid, guys. Who here is playing Druid?
I am.
Sorry, who is that?
Character.
All right, let's you'll carry this one, mate. How have you found, within the obvious prism of hardcore WoW, the Druid tank to be in comparison to the other tanks? Obviously, we're talking about things like, pressure, ease of tanking, blah, blah, blah. We just got off the Paladin that kind of does ride that pressure wave of not having the taunt, and that might make them sweat a little bit more in hardcore WoW as opposed to the usual game mode. Druid, people generally say is the easiest tank. Do you find that in hardcore it has been a breeze and people have generally enjoyed having Druid tanks, or how have you gone with it?
It's definitely a different feel to it. At times, I do feel like it can be harder than a Paladin, but at times I feel like it definitely could be easier. For me, it's definitely a lot easier than Warrior, absolutely. The only time that I really seem to struggle, especially with the Paladin, when you drop concentration, it doesn't matter whether there's 2 mobs, 5 mobs, 6 mobs, you're putting holy damage to all those mobs, which is generating threat. Whereas as a Druid, the only AoE ability you have is swipe. And if there's 5 mobs and you're only swiping 3 of them, it's very easy for, things to go wrong quickly. And I've been in that situation on my Druid and Dead Mines previously, where, we start pulling, groups of 4, 5, 6 mobs, and I'm only able to hold threat on 2 to 3 of them. And for my Druid especially, was the most amount of times where I would be trying to backtrack on myself to regain threat off of a mob that I lost aggro on, just because when I was using swipe or some of my other abilities, I wasn't able to hit everything that we had pulled at that one time.
Okay. Have you found talent-wise that you've done anything slightly different, or you're planning on doing anything slightly different with your Feral Druid? Like, I think, because I will start up a Druid soon, and I'm leaning towards Druid's so different to, I think, Warriors and Paladins in this regard, in that when you're going Feral anyway, because so many people level as Feral, the game doesn't actually ask you to get too wildly different in talent choices if you're tanking as opposed to just leveling as a cat, because obviously a lot of those talents do double up and they have something for the tank and for the bear and the cat. But I was thinking, like, I might level and almost, this is going to make people fucking lose their minds, but I would almost prefer to take tanking talents and prioritize something like a Primal Fury over something like a Blood Frenzy. Just because I'm knowing I'm going to be doing dungeons a bit, and I don't think that the tax on skipping some of those cat abilities is as prohibitive as maybe, you know, a warrior who goes down the prot tree might feel or experience life. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass. Do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I agree with you. You know, there has been a couple of different options on regards to what talents you can go to. I definitely have chosen a bit of a different setup with my talents because a lot of people will say that you do want to go into like Savage Fury or Blood Frenzy just because you may not always be the main tank. You may be going into cat form, but I choose exactly the spec that I need for me to be able to tank. And that allows me to go to Omen of Clarity and also get improved in Rage, which to me I find is a little bit better utilization because I plan on just tanking. You know, I don't ever plan on being a cat, and you know, maybe I might not be in some of those raids and situations where I need to be a cat. You know, maybe I'm only doing dungeons or things like that primarily more frequently, where those are just more quality of life improvements that allow me to be just a little bit better of a tank than if I were to go into some of those additional talents that would allow me to do a little bit more damage as a cat those few times that I may be doing damage as a cat versus tanking.
That's interesting. So you're saying, do you go a little bit of balance and a little bit of resto first and then go the feral tree?
So I do primarily actually go first directly into the feral combat, just because you want to get the feral instinct and then feral charge off the bat. You know, that feral instinct definitely is going to help you hold and maintain threat, and feral charge can really help you generate a little bit of, you know, distance between you and your DPS, which will allow you to get into the mobs first and allow you to start doing some of those abilities before they're able to get in there and start pulling some threat off you. But then, yeah, definitely, you know, having Omen of Clarity is huge. You know, being able to have a free ability every now and again is pretty nice. And then again, Restoration, just being able to instantly generate 10 rage off the bat, I mean, it's a pretty big deal, especially when, you know, you immediately charge in and then you can generate that rage off the bat and then start swiping and doing multiple damage abilities before your DPS has even gotten to the mobs.
Very nice, very nice. Mates, anything, I mean, obviously, anyone else on Druid tanking? Is anyone else sort of, you know, titillated by the concept of Druid tanking once you're done with the class that you're playing?
So I've tinkered with druids a little bit here and there. I played druid for a long time in retail, and so it's always been something that I've been drawn to in classic. I have an issue getting through those first 20 levels of slogging through the caster bonk phase, but I love playing bear in general, and I think that kind of the fact that a lot of people liken it to being like kind of the simple tank or whatever you want to call it, makes it nice as a class that I would play secondarily to my main. Plus the fact that I just enjoy playing hybrid classes that have heals and have an extra utility and stuff, makes it very appealing to me. The utility there and the diversity of the class definitely offer a lot.
Very good, very good. All right. What are we leaving on the table, character? I feel like we're doing druids dirty. Is there stuff we haven't talked about that we should?
I mean, you know, I myself personally, you know, haven't made it to 60 yet on hardcore. So I'm sure, you know, as you level up in hardcore, there definitely is going to be some differences, you know, but I've played a druid that actually was my main character back in vanilla retail. And so I've been tanking for a druid. I enjoy it. You know, there's definitely a lot of people that will say, you know, druids may not manage threat as well, or that druids are a little bit weaker off because they have the leather gear. But ultimately, it boils down to just how well are you going to be able to manage what you're fighting and recognizing your ability to tank things, you know, and again, you know, also your healer as well. So, you know, if you're running into things and you recognize that, you know, you are dying pretty rapidly, but then you're continuing to push harder and harder and you're struggling with your healers, I mean, that's really just going to show on yourself more than anything in that regard. But ultimately, I feel like it's a very viable spec. I, you know, believe that it can be very useful in certain situations. There may not always be a situation that it is going to work in, But with classic hardcore, the game is ultimately being played way differently than how we would normally play it in the regular versions, because in the regular version you can die and just come back, whereas in hardcore you really have to be careful with what you're doing and how you're playing your class to be able to make sure that you do continue that initial life and you don't die. And so druids can struggle in times where there are situations where they may not be able to tank, and it is a situation where they could die, but they just have to be aware of that situation and make sure that they can trust their healers to know that they are going to be able to handle everything that's going on.
Here's a question that, I mean, as someone, again, who's never played Druid tank in vanilla, or Druid tank in general, the pre-hot thing, like, obviously everyone knows it's a great way to generate threat, but like, do you do it like every pull, or is just certain pulls, I might pre-hot on this one? How do you generally treat the pre-hotting issue?
So I always pre-hot rejuvenation, just because it's a quick single, instant cast that you can just throw on yourself. But definitely before boss pulls, and depending on what the situation may look like, I may also throw a regrowth on there, just because the fact that, like, when you initially run into a pack of mobs, again, you are distancing yourself from the DPS when you initially get into those packs, but you're also distancing yourself from your healer as well. And so having those pre-hots on you, depending on the situation, can give your healer that additional opportunity to catch up and throw something on you to help maintain your life. But I'll always run in and just pop a quick rejuvenation, just because, again, it's an instant cast, low mana, and I can go directly into bear form.
Very good, very good. All right, guys, we'll move off the class specific stuff and we'll start to wrap this one up. But just in general, like, I would just ask, is the thrill of tanking something you would recommend to people in hardcore? Like, I really enjoy, I wanted to play a healer, and I was like, I love the concept, not in like a narcissistic way, but I loved the concept of holding the party's life in my hands. Like the challenge of, like, if I fuck up, things are going to go pretty bad pretty quick. And I would really love to heal in hardcore. But then I was like, oh, you know what? Never tanked in vanilla WoW. I'll just see how I go, give it a go. It's been so much more fun than I thought it would be. And like, it's an equal level of responsibility where, like, whilst I'm not there sort of literally bumping up health bars, I am playing with the pressure of, like, if I don't hold fucking aggro on all these things can turn south relatively quickly. Like, I've just got to make sure these things are bashing me and I am, saving lives by taking all the hits. And I've really enjoyed the pressure of being like, fucking drop that taunt quick. And I love, like, I'll challenge myself and be like, you lost aggro, get that fucking aggro back within less than half a second. Bing, bang, boom, done. That was a quick taunt. Good job, Josh. I love that shit. I feel like I'm saving the party and it's great. Do you guys enjoy playing with that pressure? Would you recommend with people to try it? How do you generally feel about tanking as we sort of start to move on?
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% in that regard. Like I mentioned earlier, I was playing a Druid. I started vanilla classic retail, and I hit level 60 during the Burning Crusade pre-patch. So I didn't necessarily get to do a lot of raiding in classic itself, but I did get to raid a lot in Burning Crusade, and I was the tank. And then going into Wrath of the Lich King, tanked in that as well up until ICC, when we got that dodge debuff that really hurt Druid tanking. But then following expansions, I continued to play a Druid tank. I loved it. I mean, tanking for me has always been like the fun thing. You're that frontline person. You're the main person, like you said. Not necessarily way of saying it, but like you're the person that holds up that whole group. And I've said it before. If I'm not able to hold threat, and that's why I have such a frustrating situation with my warrior is, if I'm losing threat, I feel like I'm taking it personally in a situation of, like, I'm not doing my job. My sole job is just to be holding threat. I don't have to worry that much about my DPS. I don't have to worry about keeping people alive, but my main primary focus is being the tank. And so that definitely bled over into, classic WoW and classic hardcore, especially with the fact now that we only have one life. I'm even more excited to be that tank, just because it's like, I'm, a big role and responsibility of this group's life, because if I die or if I fail to be a good tank, a lot of other people are going to die. Exactly, like with my example of Shadowfang Keep, where I was unable to regain threat very quickly. on the final boss in there, and somebody did die, and I took that personally. I felt bad about that because of the fact of like, while that person did immediately start damaging right off the bat and didn't allow me to gain threat, I was unable to, as the tank, regain that threat. But in the regards to the second statement that you said, should people try playing a tank? Absolutely. I think, a lot of people should try it, give it a try and see, because especially now that we're getting into that second and third wave of people that are leveling up, and you're getting those situations more commonly where people are trying to push dungeons a lot quicker because they want to get it done and over with, or they want to get back up to the level where they were before. A lot of people fail to realize how hard it is actually to be a tank sometimes. Like I said, for me as a warrior, I struggled very much as a tank, because as a warrior, I almost held threat on nothing. As a druid, if I pulled more than 3 people, I was struggling. And as a paladin, I feel like I handled very well, except for in situations where I needed to be able to taunt and I didn't have that availability. So for me, I believe that a lot of people should really try tank and actually experience it in hardcore, just so that they can see the struggle of being pushed by the DPS to go quicker and quicker, and also being able to see that, some of these tanks may not make it to 20 or 30 or 40 because of the fact that they're getting pushed so hard. They may overpool or not be able to manage something and die.
Very well said. Hey, Ren, you're right to mention this in the chat. I've made a horrible mistake, and I have done the prospective shaman tanks out there very dirty, haven't I?
Hey, I just wanted to bring them up real quick because I do hang out in the shaman channel over in the hardcore Discord every now and then, and there are some people that are pretty passionate about it. And
no, I'm all for it.
I rolled a shaman for the first time like a week ago, and it's a lot of fun. I'm gonna try tanking on it a little bit. Maybe not the most optimal thing, but I already play a paladin, so
mate,
why not?
I shouldn't, we shouldn't say nothing about it. Like, I was down on vanilla shaman tanking for so long until quite recently, when like I didn't actually realize that behind the numbers Earthshock does double threat. And I'm just like, Earthshock, once you like, I tanked a dungeon a couple of months ago as a low level shaman. I think I did like a fucking SFK or some shit like that. I was shocked that like Earthshock is effectively a taunt.
Oh yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah, it's fucking amazing. So like, by all means, like, if you want to play a shaman and tank, fucking do it. If you get people who are on board, and more people should be on board than ordinarily are, it's a bad misconception that shamans can't tank through the leveling process. Obviously once things get beyond 50, it might get a little bit shakier, but like, fucking mate, you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, who cares if the shaman is the tank? Like, go for it. I fucking love it.
On my server in 2019, we had a shaman tank, the 20-man stuff. He tanked, I believe, up to 8Q. They were very viable. Certainly the group was tailored around it, especially for the end game content, but they were very viable tanking.
That's awesome.
More love for the shaman, for sure. All right, guys, look, we'll wrap it up there. I think, Clevis, speak now or forever hold your silence. What have we left on the table? Let's one last talking point, Clevis. I'll get you to start us on. Just give us. Have you had any horror stories or any amazing stories of triumph so far in hardcore to go out on?
We've had a couple of close calls. Yeah. I've mostly been doing 5-mans with guild groups. Just because I think playing with friends is just the better way to play WoW. I think it's more fun. We've had a couple of close calls. There's a couple of little clips out there. Yeah, I think hardcore just it creates those types of moments. They probably wouldn't even be memories in a normal game mode, but in hardcore, like, I'm going to probably remember those for quite a long time.
I want to hear about the moment that made Clevis himself poo his pants. What happened?
Okay, all right. So we're in BRD, and we're mostly under level for BRD. I think I was probably 58. Everybody else was down about 53 or something. And we did have a couple of moments, but the one I'll recount here, our healer had sort of miswritten a macro, and his heals were not going out, and he lay on hands himself.
Oh no!
And so we had no mana, and I was down to about 10 or 20% health, and I had to shield wall. This was just a regular pack, but we somehow managed to be okay through that one. But I was was biting down quite hard in that moment.
What's your qualification for shield wall and hardcore? Like, I feel like you've got to hit it maybe a little bit earlier than usual. Like, in what situation? What level is your health and the healer's mana when you're like, now it's time to shield wall?
Well, like damage prevention cooldowns are one of those things that you always want to hit them before the damage hits you. So, I'm realistically, we're often always hitting them a little too late. But in this particular case, it was just the healer was completely out of mana, and the mobs, my health was still going down, and the mobs were still at full health. So I knew that I was going to need something to survive. So you just kind of, it's just a situational thing. It's not really a health total thing. It's just,
fair enough.
Are we in the shit?
Fair enough. All right. We'll tell our stories and then we'll say our goodbyes. Pyrolin, any great moments of poo in the pants or great moments of victory as a tank?
Probably the worst moment was out in Wetlands doing the Dark Iron Elite Quest with a group a couple of nights ago.
Where you get fucking PvP flagged by the bombs.
No. This is just doing the kill quest and getting Bulgaris. If we got PvP flagged, I didn't notice.
Right.
No, we had a mage pull, and it was kind of an oops. I didn't see that there were 5 dwarves there, and in the middle of pulling 5 dwarves, we had Bulgaris, the necromancer, spawn on us, and that was a moment of run. But everyone kind of stuck together on the run out. Someone got close to the healer, get the stuns on him, and everyone lived from it. So moment of victory there.
Very good, very good. Ochoa, how about you? Highlights or lowlights so far as a tank?
Nothing in hardcore so far, but sure to come.
Okay, fair enough. Character?
As I said earlier, the low point of my gaming was just especially in Shadowfang Keep, that somebody died just because I was unable to regain thread on the last boss. But the highlight of that entire experience as well is just seeing and proving that Paladin tanks are a viable tank and can be very useful.
That's the way. Ren, has anyone died on your watch?
No deaths on my watch, thankfully. But I had a really close call in a Wailing Caverns a long time ago. Something bugged out, might have been a hunter pet thing after we jumped down after killing Verdun. And we get back to like that main entryway of the dungeon where Lady Anacondra is, and something caused, I don't know, had to have been somewhere around 20 raptors to all come running towards us, and we just see them in the distance. It was like in a movie. We see them like coming towards us, and we're just like, where are they coming from? And we're like, we need to get out of here. So thankfully, I had just started crafting my target dummies right before that run. Dropped one, got out of there super quickly. We were all in Discord, and we were able to just be like, get out, get out, get out. And obviously, since we're right by the entrance, it worked out. But it was definitely got your blood pumping.
Very good. There's a common theme you should all be hearing listening to this, and that's target dummies. If you don't have them, fucking do yourself a favor and get them. Totoro, how about you? Highlights, lowlights so far?
Yeah, I guess highlight is my warrior was a level 20 at the time, also in Wailing Caverns, and I completed all of the entry quests solo, which is pretty cool, and even
very good.
Cleared out into I killed the first boss, Crash, the turtle, on my own, which was it felt pretty cool.
Very good. I think my highlight is actually non-party related, where I did the nifty stopwatch quest solo as a 41, and you've got to kill the level 45. I broke one of my golden rules for hardcore, which is don't fight anything above you, and I took on something 4 levels above me to get that fucking trinket. And thankfully it worked out for me without too much sweat, but it was a little spicy at times. But yeah, guys, look, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much to everyone for taking part in this one. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to it. We'll say our goodbyes. If you've got anything to plug, if you've got anything to say, now is the time to do it. Clevis, mate, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I will plug my healer, who we were just talking about, Tracksuit on Twitch. You guys go have a look if you want to watch a healer with a heart rate monitor on as he plays hardcore WoW. It's really entertaining.
Very good. Does he spell it the usual way?
Tracksuit with a Z or with a Z, depending how you say it. So Tracksuit.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Pyrolin, go for it, mate. It's been so good having you. Thanks so much for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me. No shout outs to anyone, but to any paladins or would-be paladins that are listening, down your rank your consecrations. Rank 3 of Seal of Righteousness has the highest coefficient, and take engineering.
Very good. Ochoa, mate, thank you so much.
I just shouting out Bloodbath and Body Hurts on Windseeker and my girlfriend. That's it.
Oh, that's sweet. I like that. Very nice. Very nice. Character?
I just want to say paladins are viable tanks, and plug my own character. There's no special characters, and if you ever need a tank, hit me up.
Very good. Everyone hit up character for a dungeon run. Ren, mate, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I just want to actually take a second. I know we talked about them before, but I want to plug the guild, Pushing Up Peace Bloom. There's a lot of great players from there, from old hardcore, from new hardcore. Like it's definitely a great place to be, and it's nice that we all kind of watch each other's backs. So shout out to them, and shout out to my family for supporting my habit.
Oh, you guys are too sweet. But yeah, guys, remember, when we're talking about Pushing Up Peace Bloom, we're talking about the Defias Pillager server. So keep that in mind. Totoro, mate, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you for having me. I do stream occasionally on Twitch, whether it's Wrath of the Lich King mage content or an occasional hardcore dungeon and hardcore here. It's DATS, DATS_TTV.
Very good. Thank you. Everyone check out DATS_TTV over there at Twitch. All right, guys, that's it. You made it. See, it wasn't that painful. We got through it okay.
Oh, it was pretty, heart rate's pretty high right now.
No, you guys did great. Look, I'll end the recording there. Thanks so much, guys. Seriously, that was pretty much exactly what I expected. And I think we pretty much hit on everything. Like, there's a couple of things I probably wanted to hit on, but we don't need to hit on. I always want to go down the toxic route of like talking about clips that I've seen and calling out people's gameplay and shit like that, but we don't need to do that. That's all right. Did you guys see the clip of the rogue, like the now what I call infamous clip of that rogue like bailing on that group in fucking RFD? Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I did.
It's one of the worst things I've fucking seen.
Yeah, that just breaks my heart when I see stuff like that, because one of the biggest things I always say is just like stand your ground. I think somebody else mentioned that as well. They were in a group where it's like, somebody had said, don't run or don't panic. That's the biggest thing. When you start panicking and running, and then you're not spending time hitting your target or hitting your mob, it's just time wasted, and it can make a situation really bad. But like, don't panic, don't run, stand your ground. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I can't get over how easily they would have gone through that pool if that fuckwit had just stayed.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen something like that, especially too, where it was like a paladin and a priest, and somebody else had pulled quite a few mobs. The priest was getting ready to die, and the paladin had, I believe, like lay on hand the priest, and then continued to pull the aggro of the mobs off of the priest, and the priest just kept running and didn't turn around to help. And it's like, this guy just saved you, pulled all the threat, and now you're just going to run away and leave him there to die?
Oh,
so
that's messed up.
The clip I'm talking about, Clevis, was this group in RFD, and they pulled 2 packs. I think there were 7 mobs on them, which is like, who cares? And all this rogue had to see, it's like still the start of the pull, all this rogue had to see was the tank loses 2 of the 7 mobs, and they start walking towards the healer, and he just vanishes and goes, nope, that's a wipe, I'm leaving. And he stays in group, and they're still alive like 90 seconds later, like still fighting, and he'd already halved out of there and was just like, nope, I don't want to die. And they fucking would have smashed it if he had stayed.
Yeah, that's the sort of like pug like horror stories that I worry about so much. Is just like people that either people that panic or people that they don't know what to do, I guess.
Yeah, they think anything that's not a 2 or 3 mob pull is a wipe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hap hit it on the nose when he was talking about just don't panic. Like
100%.
We had the other story I was thinking about was another BRD run, and we were in with Tax. Do you know Tax Services? I don't know. He's also in Pushing Up Peace Bloom, now 60 rogue. But we weren't 60 yet at the time, and we were doing the escort quest in BRD, the infamous jailbreak. And well, we were clearing it out before, and we pulled basically 2 packs, and because one runner pulled another pack, but then we were getting respawned on. We didn't realize this, so we had like 4 packs on us. Right. And one of our members at that time, because we were just slowly pulling previously, was AFK. So we were four-manning like 4 packs, and and we were just communicating like, okay, just don't panic, everybody's okay, we're all gonna be fine. And it was like brutal, but we got through it because we just like stood our ground and like used all our engineering trinkets. And you can get through a lot in this game if you just like
you really can
hold your ground.
Yeah, if people just fucking harden up and go, look, everyone shut up, concentrate, and we're going to get through this and get each other's backs, you can get through some pretty nasty pulls.
Well, and like, and the tools that people have are actually like so much stronger, I think, than most people. Like, especially if you have like cooldowns, like you think about how strong a rogue is, for example, like with their cooldowns versus not.
Exactly. All right, guys, I might end the stream there. And
real quick.
Yeah, go.
I want to give a quick shout out to my mom and my dad that I convinced to join and watch.
Very nice, very nice. All good, mate. What was I going to say? Yeah, I was thinking about streaming some gameplay after this, but I'm fucking tired. Like, doing these podcasts takes far more energy out of you than you probably realize. So I'll log on and play for a few hours, but I don't think I'll stream it. Sorry, guys. But I'll catch you all another day. Everyone watching along on YouTube, thank you so much. And to you guys, fucking, I'll come out. Is everyone going to go relocate back to pup voice chat?
Yes.
Yeah, too easy.
Yeah,
I'll come hang out. I'll get myself some lunch and I'll be there soon. So, guys, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good talking.
It's been a pleasure. All right, see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.